In the peaceful village of Orokuma, there lived a girl whose beauty could stop hearts and turn heads. Her name was Asena, and she wasn't just beautiful, she was breathtaking. Her skin glowed like the morning sun, her eyes sparkled like the stars, and her smile could melt even the coldest heart. But beyond her outward beauty, what made Asena truly special was the beauty of her soul. She was gentle, kind, and wise beyond her years. Everyone in the village admired her, not just for her looks, but for her heart. She greeted elders with respect, helped the poor without expecting anything in return, and was always the first to lend a hand to anyone in need. Children followed her around like little birds, laughing and dancing in her presence. Women admired her grace and elegance, often saying, "May our daughters grow up to be like Asena." Even the village chiefs praised her for her humility and wisdom. She never acted proud or arrogant, even though she knew people looked up to her. Instead, she remained humble, always putting others before herself. Asena loved spending her time in nature. She would often be seen at the river, fetching water, singing softly as her voice danced with the wind. She loved flowers, animals, and the simple joys of village life. Her presence brought peace wherever she went. People said, "Where Asena walks, blessings follow." Even strangers who passed through Orokuma would ask, "Who is that angelic girl?" That's how powerful her charm was. But it wasn't just her beauty that drew attention. Asena was wise, and her words carried weight. Whenever there was a dispute in the village, even the elders would ask for her opinion. She knew how to speak with calmness and truth. Her advice had a way of touching hearts and opening minds. Some said she was born with the spirit of the ancestors guiding her. Others believed she had a special blessing from the gods. Whatever it was, everyone agreed on one thing: Asena was one of a kind. Many young men in Orokuma dreamed of marrying her. They brought gifts, sang songs, and tried to impress her in different ways. But Asena was not swayed by wealth or sweet words. She believed that love should be true and honest. She wanted a partner who respected her heart, not just her beauty. So she politely turned down every proposal, waiting patiently for the right person, the one her soul would recognize. Even though many tried to win her heart, Asena remained focused on her dreams. She hoped to one day open a learning center for girls, to teach them not just how to cook and clean, but how to speak, read, lead, and believe in themselves. She often told the younger girls, "Your mind is your greatest treasure, not just your face." She was a role model, a sister, a friend, and a shining light in Orokuma. But as her light shone brighter, there were shadows watching, hiding behind smile. And while the village celebrated her goodness, not everyone carried pure intentions in their heart. One man, in particular, watched her with a growing obsession, an obsession that would soon turn her world upside down. Ngalo was one of the wealthiest hunters in Orokuma village. He had everything a man could wish for: land, cattle, money, and respect. People often spoke about how powerful and successful he was. He walked through the village with pride, head held high, chest puffed out, believing he was above everyone else. Many women dreamed of becoming his wife, hoping to enjoy the luxury and status that came with his name. But Ngalo had his eyes set on only one person: Asena. From the first day he saw her at the village square, something in his heart shifted. Her beauty struck him like lightning. Her soft voice, graceful steps, and warm smile haunted his thoughts day and night. But what troubled him the most was that Asena didn't seem impressed by him like others were. She didn't stare at him with admiration or run to accept his gifts. Instead, she treated him like every other villager, with respect, but nothing more. That bruised Ngalo's pride. Determined to make her his, Ngalo began his chase. He sent her baskets full of fruits, expensive cloth, gold bangles, and even offered her family a handsome bride price. He made promises of building her a big house, of giving her a life of comfort and ease. But Asena gently refused, time and time again. She would smile politely and say, "Ngalo, I am grateful, but I cannot marry someone I do not love. I have dreams I wish to follow." Her words were always kind, but firm. Ngalo didn't understand rejection. He wasn't used to hearing the word no. To him, Asena was just playing hard to get. so he pushed harder, trying to show off even more. He boasted in the village square about how he would one day marry her. He even warned other men to stay away from her, acting as though she already belonged to him. But Asina stood her ground. She made it clear that her heart was not for sale, and no amount of riches could change that. As time passed, Ngalo's obsession grew stronger. It was no longer just about love. It became about control. He felt insulted that a village girl would keep rejecting someone as powerful as him. His admiration turned into anger. His desire turned dark. The more Asina distanced herself, the more Ngalo's mind twisted with jealousy and pride. He began to see her rejection not as a personal choice, but as a challenge to his authority. People in the village started noticing his strange behavior. He would watch her from afar, his eyes burning with frustration. He followed her footsteps silently, trying to find a moment to speak to her alone. He would whisper threats under his breath, warning her that she would regret her decisions. But Asina, calm and brave, refused to be shaken. She still walked with grace, still smiled with peace, unaware of the storm building behind her. Ngalo's heart was no longer chasing love. It was drowning in obsession. He could not accept that a woman he desired so deeply would rather choose her dreams than his wealth. He began to believe that if he couldn't have her, no one else should. His mind, poisoned by pride and rejection, started brewing something dark and dangerous. What started as love had turned into something evil, and soon, Orakuma village would witness the terrifying result of a man whose ego had been shattered. Ngalo had tried everything he could to win Asena's heart. Gifts, promises, sweet words, even pressure from elders. But Asena remained true to herself. She had listened to him respectfully each time, but her answer never changed. She didn't want to marry him. She didn't want a life where she was caged by riches or controlled by pride. She wanted to follow her own dreams, to build a future where she could help others, teach young girls, and live a life filled with purpose, not just luxury. One afternoon, Ngalo approached her again, hoping this time would be different. He dressed in his finest clothes, walked with bold steps, and carried another expensive gift. But Asina stood calmly in front of him and spoke with the same grace and honesty. "Ngalo," she said, "you are a respected man, but I cannot marry you. My heart is not in it. I want to choose my own path, not one chosen for me by wealth or pressure. Please understand, I do not hate you, but I must follow my dreams." Her words were soft, but they hit Ngalo like a thunderstorm. In front of a few villagers who had gathered nearby, he felt his pride crack. The rejection stung more than ever before, not just because she said no, but because she said it so boldly, with no fear. He looked around and saw the eyes of others. Some whispered, some shook their heads, others just watched silently. But in Ngalo's heart, it felt like they were all laughing at him. That moment was the turning point. Ngalo's admiration turned into pure hatred. His obsession twisted into revenge. His heart, once burning with desire, now boiled with anger and shame. He walked away from Asina without a word, his fists clenched and his eyes full of fire. His pride had been crushed, and his ego couldn't take it. In his mind, Asina hadn't just rejected him, she had humiliated him. That night, alone in his compound, Ngalo sat in silence, staring into the darkness. The voice of rejection kept ringing in his ears. "I must follow my dreams," she had said. He repeated those words over and over, and each time his anger grew stronger. His thoughts became darker. He convinced himself that Asena had disrespected him, that she had insulted his name, his status, and his manhood. He refused to accept that she simply made a choice for her life. No, in his twisted mind, he believed she had wronged him. It was in that darkness that a sinister plan began to form, a plan not to win her love, but to destroy her spirit. Ngalo told himself, if she refuses to be mine, then let her face what rejection brings. Let her see what it means to embarrass a man like me. He wanted her to suffer. He wanted her to feel pain. He wanted to leave a scar so deep that she would never forget his name. He started moving in silence, hiding his anger behind fake smiles. No one in the village knew what was brewing inside him, but in his heart, Ngalo had already declared war. He had made up his mind. He would hurt Asena in the most horrible way. He didn't want her love anymore. He wanted her destruction. What he didn't know was that the same pain he planned to give would one day return to him in a way even more brutal. But for now, He was focused on revenge, and his heart was colder than ever before. It was a quiet evening in Orakuma village. The sun had set, and the sky was slowly turning dark. Asena had gone to visit an old widow who lived at the edge of the village. She often helped the woman with chores and brought her food. That night was no different. Asena walked with a small basket in her hand, smiling softly, unaware that evil eyes were watching her from the shadows. Ngalo had been waiting for this moment. He had followed her silently, hiding behind trees, breathing heavily, his mind burning with hatred. His hands gripped a small calabash tightly. Inside it was a deadly liquid he had prepared in secret. Acid, a cruel weapon, a symbol of his broken pride. His heart no longer held any love. All he wanted now was to destroy the face that had once enchanted him, the same face that had said no to him. Asena finished her visit and began walking back home. The night breeze was cool, and the path was quiet. She had no idea that danger was just a few steps behind her. Suddenly, without a sound, Ngalo stepped out from the darkness. Before Asena could even scream or run, he flung the calabash at her. The liquid splashed across her face and neck, and in that moment, her entire world shattered. A scream tore through the night. A scream so loud, so painful, it echoed through the trees. Asena dropped to the ground, rolling in agony, her hands trying to wipe away the burning pain. Her skin began to peel, her flesh sizzling under the cruel effect of the acid. Her cries could be heard from far away, and villagers rushed out of their homes in panic. They found her on the ground, shaking, her beautiful face melting in pain and blood. People gasped, some screamed, others fell to their knees in shock. It was a scene too painful to watch. The girl who once lit up the village with her smile was now crying in agony, her face unrecognizable, her body covered in wounds. Some villagers carried her to the healer's hut. Others searched around to find who had done such a wicked thing, but Ngalo had already vanished into the night. The news spread like wildfire. Orakuma village was shaken to its core. No one could believe what had happened to Asena. Mothers cried, young girls hid in fear, and men cursed the wickedness that had struck their peaceful land. People gathered outside the healer's hut, praying, whispering, hoping for a miracle. But the truth was clear. Asena's beauty was gone, and her life would never be the same again. Inside the hut, Asena lay in silence, her face wrapped in cloth, her body trembling from pain. Tears rolled down her cheeks, not just from the burning wounds, but from the sorrow of what she had lost. She could not look at herself. She could not speak. Her heart was heavy with sadness, and her spirit felt broken. The same villagers who once admired her beauty now looked at her with pity and fear. What hurt her most was not the scars on her skin, but the feeling that her identity had been taken from her in just a few seconds. She felt like a stranger in her own body. The girl who once danced in the sunlight, laughed with friends and dreamed of changing the world, was now trapped in silence and pain. But even in her darkest moment, something inside her still flickered, something small yet strong, a tiny flame that refused to die. As the days passed, that flame would grow, but for now, Asena was left in the shadows, scarred and silent, while the entire village mourned the tragedy that had fallen upon their shining star. Days turned into weeks, but Asena's pain never faded. Her body was healing slowly, but her heart was still bleeding from the cruel attack that changed everything. She could barely recognize the person in the mirror anymore, the once beautiful girl who smiled at the morning sun, who lit up the village with her charm and kindness, was now hiding in the shadows, silent, broken, and scarred. She stayed in a small hut at the edge of Orakuma village, away from the people and the world she once loved. Curtains always covered the entrance. She barely spoke to anyone, and even the birds outside seemed quieter near her home. Every morning, she woke up to pain, not just from her wounds, but from the memories that haunted her. The moment when the acid hit her skin, the burning, the screaming, the fear in everyone's eyes, the way the village changed after that night. People who used to greet her with warm smiles now only whispered about her. Some came at first, bringing food, flowers, or soft words of encouragement, but slowly their visits faded. The pity in their eyes became uncomfortable. Some avoided looking at her directly. Others stayed away completely, as if her scars were something to fear or hide from. Children were warned not to ask questions. Friends who once sat with her under the mango tree now walked past her hut silently. Asina noticed it all. Every whisper, every stare, every step away. It was like the acid had not only scarred her skin, but also burned the bridge between her and the world. Her heart ached more than her body. The silence was louder than any scream. She didn't blame the villagers. They didn't know how to act around her anymore. But the isolation made her feel like a ghost in a place that once celebrated her. She stopped looking in mirrors. She stopped combing her hair. She didn't sing anymore, didn't dance, didn't smile. The joy she once carried so proudly had been buried under layers of shame and sadness. She felt useless, forgotten, like she had no purpose anymore. At night, she cried softly, pressing her pillow against her face so no one would hear. Sometimes she would remember how things used to be, the festival, the laughter, the dreams she once had. And then, those memories would bring more pain, because they reminded her of everything she had lost. There were times she wondered if life would ever feel normal again. Would anyone ever see her as more than her scars? Would she ever feel whole again? Or was this her fate, to live in silence, behind a curtain, while the world moved on, without her? Even when people passed by her hut, their voices were filled with pity, not love. "Ah, poor Asina," they would whisper. "She was so beautiful, such a bright girl. Now look at her." That sentence crushed her more than anything, not because she lost her beauty, but because it felt like she lost her worth, like people only valued her because of her face, not her soul. But what no one knew was that deep inside her, something was still alive, a quiet strength, buried under all the pain, a small voice inside her heart that refused to be silent forever. That voice hadn't spoken yet, but one day it would rise again, stronger, louder, braver. And when it did, the whole village would see that true beauty cannot be destroyed by scars. But for now, Asina remained in her hut, hurting, healing, and holding on to the tiny spark of hope that still lived inside her. Just when it seemed like Asina's life would remain trapped in pain and silence forever, something unexpected happened. One warm morning, a stranger arrived in Orakuma village. His name was Rukai, a quiet, calm man with wise eyes and a gentle spirit. He didn't speak much, but his presence carried a strange kind of peace. People didn't know much about him, only that he was a traveler and a herbal healer who had wandered from village to village, helping those in need with his deep knowledge of roots, leaves, and nature's hidden magic. At first, no one paid him much attention. He stayed at the edge of the village, setting up a small wooden stall with herbs and natural oils. But word quickly spread that his hands could heal wounds that even time struggled to touch. The old, the sick, even mothers with crying babies began to visit him, and slowly, whispers of his kindness reached every corner of Orakuma, including Asina's hut. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Rukai heard two women talking near his stall. Their words were heavy with sadness as they spoke about the girl whose life had been ruined by acid. They spoke about her beauty, her silence, her pain, and how no one visited her anymore. Rukai said nothing, but his heart ached. That night, he asked an old man in the village to tell him more, and when he heard everything about Ngalo, the attack, the scars, the isolation, he knew he had to see her. The next day, he walked slowly to her hut, carrying a small basket filled with healing herbs. He stood quietly at her door and softly called her name. At first, Asina didn't answer. She thought it was another villager coming to stare at her with pity. But Rukai's voice was gentle, respectful, patient. He didn't force his way in. He just stood there, waiting. Eventually, Asina opened the curtain slightly. She looked at him with suspicion and fear, but he didn't flinch at the sight of her scars. He simply bowed his head and said, "I'm not here to look at your face. I'm here to help your soul heal." Those words touched something in her heart, something that hadn't been touched in a long time. Rukai didn't ask questions. He didn't give false promises. He simply offered her a chance, just one small chance, to try again. He told her the herbs wouldn't erase every scar, but they could ease the pain, calm the fire under her skin, and help her body feel lighter, More importantly, he offered her his time, his wisdom, and his friendship, without judgment. Asena hesitated at first, but something in Rukai's eyes made her want to trust again. Slowly, she let him treat her wounds. Every day he came with new leaves, oils, and pastes. He taught her how to mix them, how to care for her skin, and how to breathe through the pain. And as the days passed, something beautiful began to grow, not just healing on her skin, but strength in her spirit. For the first time in months, Asena started to speak. She asked questions. She learned. She listened. Rukai didn't just treat her, he trained her, teaching her about herbs, about the body, about healing from within. He helped her find her power again, a power that had nothing to do with her face, but everything to do with her heart. No one in the village expected it. They thought Asena's story had ended the night she was attacked, but life had just started writing a new chapter, and the pen was now in her hands. Day by day, Rukai continued to treat Asena's wounds with gentle care and patience. His hands moved with kindness, and his heart carried no pity, only respect. The herbs he applied soothed her burning skin, and his calm words comforted her aching soul. The healing was slow, but something powerful was happening. Asena wasn't just healing on the outside. Something deeper was changing inside her. The girl who once hid behind her curtain, afraid of the world, was slowly beginning to rise again. Rukai didn't just bring herbs. He brought knowledge. He began to teach Asena everything he knew about nature's medicine, how to recognize healing leaves, how to mix roots for pain relief, how to prepare healing oils for scars. Asena listened carefully. She practiced. She wrote everything down. She had found something new, purpose. Her hands, once trembling with shame, now moved confidently, crushing herbs and boiling mixtures. Her heart, once filled with sorrow, now burned with curiosity and strength. But Rukai didn't stop there. He noticed how Asena still lowered her eyes when others passed by. He saw the fear in her shoulders whenever voices rose. So he began to teach her something more, how to protect herself. Every evening, under the big mango tree behind her hut, Rukai showed her simple moves for self-defense. He taught her how to stand firm, how to use her balance, how to protect herself if anyone ever tried to harm her again. At first, Asena laughed nervously, but soon she was kicking and blocking with power and confidence. She wasn't just a victim anymore, she was becoming a warrior. Then came the most powerful part of her transformation. Rukai encouraged her to speak, not just to him, but to others. He told her, "Your voice is stronger than your scars." At first, Asena hesitated. She was afraid people would look at her face and forget her words. But Rukai kept pushing gently. He would ask her to read aloud. He would ask her to share her thoughts. Little by little, Asena found her voice again. Her words grew stronger, clearer, and bolder. She spoke with wisdom, and people started to listen. Soon, women in the village began to come to her, not just for herbs, but for advice. They came with their pain, their secrets, their struggles. Asena listened, comforted them, and shared what she had learned. She became a light for those who felt lost. People stopped seeing the scars. They started seeing the strength behind them, her confidence, her kindness, her courage. It all began to shine brighter than her former beauty ever did. Children admired her, women respected her, and even the elders nodded in approval when she passed. Asena no longer walked with her head down. She walked tall, with pride in her heart and purpose in her steps. What Nyalo had tried to destroy had only made her stronger. The pain that once chained her had now become her power. She was not just a girl with scars. She was a healer, a teacher, a voice, and a symbol of hope. The girl who once suffered in silence was now leading others toward healing and strength. Her transformation was no longer just about her skin. It was a fire within her soul that could not be dimmed. Asena was no longer the same girl who once hid behind the walls of her hut, drowning in pain and shame. She had changed. She had grown stronger, braver, and wiser. The world that once seemed so cruel and dark now felt like a place where she could make a difference. With her scars still visible, but her spirit shining brighter than ever, Asena stepped out into the heart of the village, not to beg for acceptance, but to lead with purpose. The people of Orikuma were stunned. They stared as Asena walked through the market square, with her head held high, her shoulders strong, and her voice firm. The whispers that once mocked her were now filled with surprise and respect. Children paused their games to look at her with awe. and the women stood silently, their eyes filled with admiration. She had returned not as a victim, but as a symbol of courage and healing. Asina began to speak openly about what had happened to her. She no longer hid her story. She shared it boldly, not to seek sympathy, but to give strength to others. Her words were powerful, not because they were perfect, but because they were real. She spoke from the heart, and every woman who had ever felt pain, fear, or shame saw a part of themselves in her story. Soon, women from nearby villages started to visit Orokuma just to see Asena. They came in secret, some with bruises, some with tears, and some just needing someone to listen. Asena welcomed them all. She offered them herbs for their wounds, food for their bodies, and words of hope for their souls. She sat with them, held their hands, and reminded them that they were not alone, that they were worthy, that they were strong. With the help of Rukai and a few kind villagers, Asena used a small piece of land to build a support center, a safe space where women could come to heal, learn, and grow. It was a simple structure made of mud bricks and palm leaves, but inside it held something powerful, hope. She called it House of Light. Inside, women were taught how to make herbal medicine, how to defend themselves, how to speak boldly, and most importantly, how to rise again. People from far and wide started talking about Asena. Her story spread across villages. Even elders from neighboring towns invited her to speak during community gatherings. She wasn't just helping women, she was changing the way people thought. Men who once believed women should remain silent now sat quietly as Asena spoke about respect, dignity, and justice. Asena's scars became a badge of honor, not shame. They told a story of pain, survival, and transformation. And with every woman she helped, with every voice she lifted, her own healing became deeper. She had turned her suffering into a purpose. She had become a voice for the voiceless, a warrior for those who could not fight alone. She no longer lived in the shadows of her past. She walked in the light of her mission. Asena had risen, not just for herself, but for every broken soul who needed to know that pain does not define you. Strength does. While Asena was rising and finding her purpose, Nyala was walking deeper into his own destruction. His pride had grown even bigger after the attack, thinking he had silenced Asena forever. But life has a strange way of turning things around. What Ngalo didn't know was that the same evil he poured into the world was slowly circling back to him. Ngalo continued living with his arrogant pride, treating people harshly and using his power to control others. His heart grew darker. He believed he was untouchable because of his wealth and connections. But deep inside, people feared him, not because of respect, but because of the cruelty he carried. Even animals in the forest seemed to sense his darkness. His hunting became less successful, and his men started abandoning him one by one. One day, a terrible event took place in a nearby village. A young girl had been attacked brutally, and when the villagers investigated, all evidence pointed to Ngalo. Witnesses came forward, brave enough to speak now that Asena's voice had inspired many. The chief of the village ordered Ngalo's arrest. He tried to escape, but he was caught and dragged to the village square, where the people demanded justice. For the first time, Ngalo was powerless. His money couldn't save him. His charm meant nothing. He was taken to the city prison, where no one cared about his status or past glory. Inside those walls, he was just another criminal. He was treated the same way he had treated others, with no kindness, no mercy. But the real punishment was yet to come. One night, a fire broke out in the prison. Chaos erupted as prisoners screamed and guards tried to restore order. In the middle of that chaos, Ngalo was trapped. The flames surrounded him. He struggled to escape, but it was too late. He survived the fire, but his face was badly burned, his body scarred, and his hands twisted. The same way he had ruined Asena's beauty, life had now turned the pain back to him. When he was taken to the hospital prison ward, people were shocked. The once proud hunter, the man who had walked with a proud chest and flashing smile, was now lying helpless, disfigured, and broken. No one came to visit him, not even the men who once followed him. He was left alone, forgotten by the world he once tried to control. News of Ngalo's downfall reached Orokuma. People shook their heads and whispered, "This is karma." Even those who had once feared him said it was justice from the heavens. But Asena, with all her strength, didn't celebrate his pain. She simply said, "Life has a way of teaching lessons no one can escape." Ngalo lost everything: his looks, his pride, his freedom, and his power. All the things he once used to hurt others were taken away from him, and in the end, He realized that no one escapes the consequences of their actions. The pain he had caused returned to him in a crueler way. Karma had found him, and it was brutal. Asangalo sat silently in his prison bed, covered in scars and regret. The world outside had already moved on. His name was no longer feared. It was now a story people told to warn others. Don't let your pride become your prison, and never use your power to hurt the innocent, because one day karma will come knocking. Asena's journey was nothing short of a miracle. From a young girl whose beauty once caught everyone's attention, to a scarred woman who rose beyond pain, beyond shame, and became a voice for many. The same village that once turned their faces away from her now looked up to her with deep respect. People no longer saw the scars on her face. They saw the light in her heart. They saw her courage, her strength, and her wisdom. Asena had become more than just a woman who survived a tragedy. She had become a symbol of hope, of healing, and of true strength. Word of her work traveled beyond Orikuma. Her story spread to nearby villages, and even reached the royal palace in Tofara. The king himself, a wise and kind-hearted ruler, heard about the girl who turned her pain into purpose. He was touched by her bravery and inspired by how she used her own scars to heal others. He sent messengers to invite her to the royal palace. When Asena arrived, dressed in simple but graceful attire, heads turned, not because of beauty, but because of the powerful presence she carried. Standing before the king, she shared her story, not with tears of pain, but with pride and strength. She spoke about the importance of inner beauty, of kindness, of treating others with respect, and of standing up for the weak. The king was moved. He rose from his throne and declared Asena a heroine of the land. He said, "True greatness is not in the face we see, but in the soul that shines through. Asena, you are a light this kingdom will never forget." The crowd in the palace cheered, and Asena was honored with a golden medal and a seat in the Royal Advisory Council, so her voice could continue to shape the future of the land. She used that platform to build stronger systems for protecting women, to create healing centers in other villages, and to inspire more girls to find their strength. Back in Orikuma, the people celebrated her. Children grew up hearing her name, not as the girl who was attacked, but as the woman who rose. Mothers told their daughters about Asena's courage. Her story became part of village songs and festival stories. The once silent girl in the hut had now become a legend, one whose story gave others the courage to keep going. Asena never tried to hide her scars. In fact, she wore them proudly. "These scars," she would say, "are not a mark of shame, but a sign that I survived what was meant to destroy me." Her life was a reminder to everyone that real beauty is not what you see in a mirror. Real beauty is in how you treat people, in how you rise after falling, in how you love yourself when the world tries to break you. And so, her story ended, not in sorrow, but in triumph. A girl whose face was once admired, but whose soul later won the world. A girl who was broken, but rebuilt herself stronger. And a girl who proved that even when the world takes everything from you, if you hold on to your spirit, you still have everything. Asena became a name that would forever be remembered, not for her face, but for her fire. Because in the end, scars may stay on the skin, but greatness lives in the heart. If this story touched your heart, if Asena's pain, courage, and strength made you feel something deep inside, then don't let her journey end here. Let her scars remind us all that true beauty is not what we see on the outside, but the strength we carry within. There are so many people out there still suffering in silence, and maybe, just maybe, sharing this story could give them hope. So please, don't scroll away quietly. Take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs inspiration, and help spread the message that pain doesn't define us. Resilience does. And if you believe in powerful stories that heal, uplift, and change lives, then kindly hit that subscribe button and join this growing family. We have more heartfelt stories coming your way, stories that will make you cry, smile, and believe in hope.
कैसे I'm साथे कैसे क्या रोल है किस दे अल्लाह दे बंदे कोई वायरल करो चाहे मैं कोई अफ्रीका ना ट्रम्प दिकार मैं को उड़ाओ में एक दफा पता लगे ये नहीं मसाते है मसाते पत्ता उठना जाए माम उत्ते बैठा ले उमले दा सागर मामू को नहीं आया मंजुल अफकार तो गया अंजल दे पहले तो मामू साल दे मंजुल अफकार ले सा आए बैठे से नहीं बैठा उमले शायद मामू चले आए वल्ला कौन है हाल दे ओ मैं ठामे उड़े कट्ठे बदे तय कर ले बेटा पता था कट्ठे ना अच्छा बस मामू तो पहले आ गया नहीं तो गालें सुनने पाऊँ ना लेट क्यों लेट कैसे मैं आपके साथ गया वो इतना आ कैसे मुर्शिद अली खान चाय पीती हुई है बस ये अस्पताल दे घुमाई है था अस्पताल आमद अली होने दे डेरे दे नाल है मेरे ख्याल चाय जबरदस्त होंगी चाय लेकिन अड्डे दी मदद दी है अगर पीती भी कहीं अड्डे वाली चाय मुन्ने वाली नवाब वाला दी पीती भी नवाब वाला दी लेवल वाली चाय है
यहाँ पीसीआर केबल कितना है देखो बार बड़ी है
कितना बार मैं वीडियो बनाना बैठा मैं लेना यार ये केबल टाइप पे है पीसीआर है दिखा ये नो क्या ये तो नहीं तो तू केबल कितना रख गया है मसाते तारा चैनल मोनेटाइज थी वैसे ये वाला ये भी गारंटी तक कौन है ना के वाला मोनेटाइज थी मतलब बाद ही में व्यू आ में 10,000 5,000 7,000
बाद दी गारंटी दासा क्या देंगे गारंटी के वो मोनेटाइज थी वने ना चलो बम जेरे व्यू आसन पर कोई डाल अच्छा लगता नहीं तेरा
या ये भी थी सकदा भी बाई चांस वीडियो की लगी बने ये गाली कोनी के
बहरहाल दे सकते यार ऊंचा के इंप्रेशन इतना कोनी है इंदे ते लाख इंप्रेशन आया भाई
एक वीडियो थे तो सही है जो खबर बनाते गई वो वीडियो
लाख बंदे तो गए थे डा 11,000 व्यू आया
50,000 व्यू आना चाहिए था
इतने कोनी सारे को जो बैठे थे फूफी दे पुत्र जो एक्शन साकू
लेकिन यार लाख बंदे तो गई पे आधी तो देखा 3 जैसा तो देखे ना 3,000 व्यू तो आना चाहिए था
3 जैसा देखे ना कि अगर क्लिक थ्रू रेट 33 हो गया
तेरा कितना
सादा है 12 13 14 इतना होना होंदे इतना अक्सर इतना रह गए तो ढेर बंदा ही नहीं
12 13 अंदर नहीं यार बात संग दे गल तो नहीं
मेरी एक वीडियो ते पढ़ी थे आए बस
वो वीडियो वायरल सही है
उनके ते इंप्रेशन है 1500 तो व्यू आया पे 900
बात तो ठीक है
कहीं वीडियो ते में थी अंदर कोई यो जी कोई एक दो वीडियो में पर अक्सर ते नहीं थी अक्सर ते 10 12 13 14
इतना एरा सोच कैमरा है
सही है
एरा सोच के नहीं लगा
बारा ले है यार जेरी फील्ड जैसा वधे है ना कोई छक्का लगसी तो सही करे ना करे रिव्यू मिलियन सिलियन तो वाइन संगदी है वीडियो है गल तक कोने कह चैनल तो
हां मैं देखा नहीं तो अगर फ्रेश थे ना इंप्रेशन सही आने अगर फ्रेश थे कोई न्यूज़ वाली हिका लगी मैंने उतना थे यो इंप्रेशन की जैसे मोनेटाइज की जैसे जेरे वाला एक बार इंप्रेशन सदु सही